The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Bye, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Before we go any further, let's just say congratulations to Scott Wilson. Dr. Wilson was elected to Onchan Commissioners last night at 63% majority. And also, we look forward to the new bishop being enthroned. Trish the Bish gets her official authority to begin her ministry as Bishop of Sewage and Mann. First woman to take the role 20 years after the first female priest was appointed on the Isle of Man. So, that's 2 o'clock today. Trish the Bish, Patricia Hillis, becomes Bishop of Sewage and Mann at Cathedral Isle of Man in Peel. And if you can't make it to the Cathedral at Peel today, you can hear about it on Sunday's At Your Service with Judith Lay at 9:30 Sunday morning. The news has come. I mean, was it that much of a surprise? Ramsey's Lloyds Bank's going to close next year, February next year, due to a significant drop in the number of people visiting it. Between 2018 and 2023, 5 years, they were obviously monitoring it, transactions at Parliament Street fell by a third. 10th of February, Lloyds closes in Ramsey, and people are being advised to go all the way to Douglas or use Lloyds banking services in post offices instead. Beastie's on now. Hi, Beastie.
Hello.
You're not happy about Lloyds, are you?
I can barely speak. Can I have 4 short points to make?
Oh, yes, by all means.
Right. The first one is a huge congratulations to Drew McGuinness. Everything he said is absolutely spot on. He's gone to the depth of the problems that will accrue. I won't repeat everything he said. People will have heard it on Manx Radio, I hope. But a huge congratulations to him. Very eloquent indeed. The second one is there's a certain irony, isn't there, that pensioners recently, I believe, I've always had my pension paid into the bank anyway, but I believe some pensioners get their money from the post office, and they were told this was no longer continuing and they would have to open a bank account and get their money from the bank. No sooner have they done that than they can't get their money from the bank anymore because the bank ain't there. The third point is that we're being told by Lloyds, well, that's no problem, just go to Douglas. They have no conception whatsoever of the people, a lot of people in the north of the island who have mobility problems. They are coming from Bride, Andros, Solby, Reggaby, wherever. They are getting the Connect buses, which is a fantastic service. They're standing at the end of their little drive waiting for the Connect bus to come, hobbling onto it, getting into Ramsey, going into Lloyds, to be met with just such wonderful, wonderful staff there. They're just wonderful. And then they might spend a couple of hours in Ramsey doing a bit of shopping and then getting the Connect bus going home again. And what do Lloyds say? Well, just go to Douglas. We're talking about a whole day for these people. Are they going to get on the bus then, an hour on the bus to Douglas, then getting from there, hobble into Lloyds? They have got absolutely no idea whatsoever what a change this will be for them.
I mean, they don't care, do they, Beastie? I mean, this was always going to come.
I nearly said something rude then, that they didn't give...
Yeah, well, 2 tuppenny tossers, I think you meant to say.
Similar.
There we are. But I mean, the fact they did a 5-year survey of the whole thing, this was always going to happen. There'll be somebody
sitting... 5 years survey. A third of people no longer use the bank. That means that 2/3 still do, including shopkeepers paying their cash in. Oh, they're just going to pop down to Douglas and do that every day, are they?
Well, that's a very important point, and the fact that...
But it's one that Ewan made.
Yes, and it will seem then that they're just driving people away from Lloyds to Barclays and Isle of Man Bank for as long as they both last there.
Well, of course, Barclays is only open a couple of days a week. Now, that'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? The other couple of days, Lloyds can have it. Incidentally, yes. I was told by one of the tellers, who are just fantastic, the people in there, they're your friends. They're wonderful. And some of them are not going to be able to get to Douglas. But I was told, apparently, Lloyds own that building anyway.
Is that so?
Yeah, well, that's what I was told, and I've no reason to disbelieve that they actually own the building. So, but can I get on to my fourth point, which is the most important one?
Yes, go on.
It's to do with a cashless society. This is what it's all about. We're being forced into online banking. Loads and loads of people don't even have a computer. I would like to know how many it is. But unfortunately, although it was the last question on the census form, when the report came out with all the results, that one wasn't on there.
Yeah, I mean, they have an agenda, Beastie, and that's it. There are people sitting in head offices in banks everywhere just calculating cost and benefit. And
Andy,
they think obviously now that Lloyds in Ramsey costs too much and it's of no benefit to the bank.
Andy, I really am beginning to think it's much more sinister than that. There's something going on to drive this island away from cash so that it is an entirely cashless society. And once that happens, we are absolutely and totally being controlled by whom? I don't know. I don't know who it is, but we are in their control. All their data is, well, even now, I don't think people realise every time they use their card, that data is gathered and can be sold. Every single thing that they do, where they are, who they're with, what they're doing, is being collected and sold. And once there is no cash, every single person on this island, their entire movements, their entire life, apart from all the other sinister things like smart meters and what have you, that will be logged. And even more, do people not realise that once it is an entirely card only, whoever is behind all of this, and I really am beginning to think there's something really sinister. It's not just the banks. There's something sinister because once everyone is only using a card, then one day that card can say, well, nobody's buying petrol today and nobody will be able to.
So what do you say? What do you say, Beastie, to the... it's a generational thing because younger people, the younger generation, this is de rigueur to them. They use cards all the time. Everything's automatic.
Can I just interrupt? The other day, I was in a supermarket and there was a probably 12 or 13-year-old boy next to me, and he had a few things in his basket. And when he came to pay, Andy, I leapt for joy. He paid with your old-fashioned money. And now, I won't go so far as to say he had a pound note, but he'd had actual money. And I looked at him and I said, well done. And I got the feeling that this was normal for him. Incidentally, the pound notes, where am I going to get me pound notes from?
I expect everybody now to go out, if you're going to a bank today, go and change your £50 notes into £1 Manx notes, please. Use Manx notes. Get Manx pound notes.
I have convinced Tesco's now that they still are legal tender, having been refused 3 times.
Yes.
No, what's this? This isn't legal tender. Not that I go in there very often. I think it's odious, but that's by the by. No, I think something very sinister is going on, and I think people must be made aware of what... This card isn't just a handy thing that you can buy a packet of crisps with, which I have witnessed. It's control. It's data collection. Something is behind it, and I'm very worried. Let's see what other people have to say. Thank you for the time, Andy.
Okay, no, appreciate it. Beastie, have a good weekend.
Well, I'll try to.
All right, Beastie was talking about Ewan McGuinness, Commissioner McGuinness in Ramsey. Ewan was asked about what the situation is with Lloyds and what he thought about it. This is Ewan McGuinness.
Disappointment, really. I think local banking, high street banking, especially in a town like Ramsey, is integral to the community. It's more than just somewhere you get some money out or pay some money in. It's a lifeline, and it's a real sort of community aspect. And losing, after HSBC went in recent years, losing Lloyds, Barclays reducing its hours, it's a real loss to the town and a real shame.
Footfall has dropped by a third. It stands to reason then that 2/3 of the regular customers are still relying on that bank. So do you think there's still enough people there that they should reconsider this?
I'd hope so. I think the loss of a third is quite a low number to make such a large change. I'd be surprised if they will consider it. Sadly, I think a large retail bank such as Lloyds probably cares very little about a town like Ramsey, but it would be nice if they did have second thoughts, because I think the impact to those 2/3 of customers will be huge.
Got any thoughts on this? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. Lloyds Bank in Parliament Street going in February next year. Andrew's with us now. Hi, Andrew.
Hi. I'm ringing about Lloyds Bank, Ramsey, and I'm surprised that it stayed open so long.
Why?
Because every time I've been in, there's been 3 people behind the counter and no customers. Clearly, when I go into Lloyds in Douglas, there's always a queue. When I go into Ramsey, they're just looking at me, waiting for me to decide which one to go to.
So why do you think that is? I mean, obviously fewer people going in there, but I mean, why would that be?
I have no idea. I know internet banking has become more popular, but I still go into Lloyds myself, and I use their cash point machine. But why people are not going into the bank, I don't know.
Well, I think Lloyds say they're still going to keep an ATM. They're going to keep a cash point there in Parliament Street. But, I mean, gone are the days when banks used to be community facilities now. It was always about money, but even now it's more about money and cash flow and profit.
I heartily agree with that one. If they're not making a profit and they're not getting the footfall in the door, as I say, I'm surprised the branch survived as long as it has. Okay.
All right, Andrew, we appreciate your call. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.
19 minutes past 12. And Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. I totally agree with your 2 previous callers. Beastie hits a lot of good points there. I think somehow it doesn't really matter what kind of corporate or government. I think there seems to be this disconnect as to who's working for who, actually.
Interesting. When Beastie was saying that, when she's talking about the fact that, something's happening somewhere, but she doesn't quite know what it is. This seems to be a common theme with many people nowadays, almost a feeling of powerlessness, of not knowing where the power lies. Once upon a time, you knew where the power was. It was your boss. That was the person who had the power, and obviously there were governments. But obviously now with global corporations and supranational institutions, there seems to be just a bit of a disconnect, don't you think?
Yeah. It's almost like we're being nannied in some ways. Come along. Online is the way to go. Yet cyber attacks and all that type of thing are massively more than it was when it was just cash. If you had a £5 in your pocket, unless somebody hit you over the head with a kosh, it was difficult. Whereas now, press of a button and it's all gone, isn't it?
But then again, Julian, everybody is walking headlong towards this cashless future. You know, I'm guaranteed now there's somebody listening to Mannin Line who at 3 o'clock this morning was shopping on Amazon. Somebody would have been doing something like that, which you could never have done before. So the convenience and the ease that an online world gives you, I suppose the downside is that, you know, we're going to lose places like Lloyds in Ramsey and many more.
That's it. It seems that people are adapting, you know, with the best will in the world. If, you know, sometimes I wonder, the prices on the island sometimes are so expensive, I wonder why they just don't buy it on Amazon and just charge a bit extra. You know what I mean? Rather than the huge disparity between what you can get on Amazon and what they charge here.
Yes, and as you say, the fact is that we have to maintain an economy on the Isle of Man. We have to maintain a retail presence. But how do you do that? How do you square that particular circle? Will it just be services that people sell to one another on the Isle of Man, and it won't be goods? It'll just be services.
Yeah, it's an uncertain future. And, you know, speaking of control, as Beastie was talking about, I noticed David Ashford in the news and also in the paper saying that the lack of immigration control and regulation, unlike the UK, who has a lot of that, he's likening the immigration situation on the Isle of Man to the Wild West. And I'm just wondering, you know, perhaps we should get the immigration thing in order first before, say, for example, deploying armed police to just about every incident possible. You know, even if it's a case of locals with drugs, you know, if you're bringing in a lot more people, there's, you know, a lot more options for sales.
Well, it comes down to that feeling of powerlessness and not quite knowing about things. And the Isle of Man being the Isle of Man, in the absence of cold, hard fact and figures and numbers, the skeet arrives, Julian.
Well, I've just been talking to an 86-year-old who said as well, apart from, you know, getting control of immigration on the island and telling us exactly who is who, criminals tend to escalate. If the police start having guns everywhere, what's to stop the criminals from thinking, right, okay, fair game then, because that's what's happened in the UK in the past.
Well, there are certainly more guns around now in the UK than there ever used to be.
Well, yeah, and they're illegal, aren't they? You know, especially handguns. But did I also hear yesterday that David Ashford said that heat pumps are non-fossil fuel boilers? When he was on the Mannin Line yesterday.
When he was talking about the cost of them, I think he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, he referred to them as non-fossil fuel boilers. I'm just wondering where he thinks the equivalent of at least 2 ovens worth of electricity per heat pump is going to come from, namely a gas turbine at Pulrose. And I noticed that with the current price for importing electricity down the interconnector is at least double of what it costs to get it from Pulrose Power Station. If we go down the net zero route of getting rid of Pulrose and we start drawing down the interconnector, what will the price going to be like to use those heat pumps in our green future? I also noticed on an FOI number 4107653, the relative price of green certified portion of our imported electricity, if you go from the last 3 years, it's been about 3% different between the normal electric and the green. But last year, it jumped to 15% more than the normal electric. So that kind of flies in the face of us being told that renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels. And that brings me to yesterday's discussion in the Houses and in the House of Commons. And 3 lords, Lord Frost, Moynihan and Rooker, all called for a pause in the net zero plan to allow proper financial scrutiny. Lord Foster stated that despite the public messaging from the newly formed NESO, offshore wind is cheaper than gas, coal or nuclear. He stated that they're saying it's £44 per megawatt hour. However, audited accounts from wind farm operators indicate the true operating cost could be almost 4 times that amount at £150 per megawatt hour. And on top of this, the capital cost of installation of these wind farms is double what they're saying it is in the reality of the audited account. They also say that the UK government's calculations, and somewhat similar to here, are using a load factor, which is the amount that they think these things are going to run in the year, of 61%, which looks implausible when the newly audited accounts reveal that offshore wind's load factor is starting when new at 45%, diminishing within a few years to 40%, and likely to be under 40% over the lifetime of the wind farms, which completely overstates the financial case for renewables. And this also means that as the wind turbines diminish in performance with blade edge erosion and wear of the gearbox, the estimate is now that it's going to be necessary to build an extra 50% more wind farms than originally envisaged just to meet the energy targets that net zero demands. And on top of that, you've got huge amounts of energy are going to be needed for the upgrades to the transmission and distribution wiring network. And this is going to apply to the Isle of Man as well, so we're not going to get away from it. The ever-rising costs of subsidies, constraint payments, curtailment fees, and the inevitable rationing of our electricity using, as Beastie said, demand-side response compliant smart meters. Now, the originator of the cheapest calculations for renewables is the Department for Energy and Net Zero, commonly referred to as DesNet. And so far, there's been no scrutiny allowed on DesNet's assertions. These assertions, according to Lord Moynihan yesterday, are divorced from reality. Lord Moynihan said that policymakers should surely demand to have what net zero will cost using real numbers, not assertions with little grounding in reality.
So what should we be doing on the Isle of Man, Julian?
Well, you know, we're not getting any answers to what is going to be the true consequences.
Well, all they say to us, Julian, is trust us. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it, but what they're saying is, we know what we're doing, trust us.
Yeah, but, you know, you've got, say, for example, the UK Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, this is kind of the parallel I think that we're following. This is the nitty-gritty of what the Isle of Man is following. And the UK Office for Budget Responsibility is responsible for the environmental levies, which is a spider's web of extra cost to the taxpayer, like renewable obligations, contracts for difference, and feed-in tariffs. That portion is adding 12 billion per year onto the UK taxpayer. And the trouble you've got is NESO and the Office for the Budget Responsibility are taking DesNet's wildly optimistic estimates as gospel, and there's no scrutiny or accountability whatsoever on those numbers.
Okay.
Now,
right.
Lord Rooker...
Okay, very quickly, because we've got to move on.
Yeah, sure. But just finally, Lord Rooker, who actually says he likes turbines, but commented that the UK currently cannot even build railways as fast as the Victorians did. And he also said that NESO's predictions are pie in the sky when they say that within the next 1,800 days to 2030, you're going to have market reforms to find an extra 40 billion a year, double the number of onshore wind farms, quadruple the number of battery storage facilities at vast cost, tripling of solar, doubling of high-voltage interconnectors installed in the last 10 years, but now in 5 years, hideously expensive carbon capture and storage facilities that haven't even been deployed at large scale yet, 6 times the amount of offshore wind deployment within the next 2 years.
Okay, all right, we've got to move on, Julian, but thanks for calling today. We appreciate it. Good to hear from you. And Betty's on now. Hi, Betty.
Hi, Andy. I agree with most of what Julian says about wind farms and so on. And I also agree with what Beastie was saying. And one of the things that you mentioned was my daughter thought that perhaps all 3 banks could come together and use one particular building.
Well, they do that I think in some places, and I got a message in from Ryan on 023 said, I think they should put all the banks in Ramsey in one place and just have different counters for different banks.
Yes, that's what we think too. It would save them money, and it would still mean we could bank in Ramsey.
Yeah, it's called a banking hub.
Well, could that be considered? And is there anything we can sign to say that we don't want this to happen?
I wonder. Well, okay. Well, we'll watch and we'll wait.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, go on, Betty.
Well, the other thing wasn't anything to do with banks or anything. I just wanted to thank Ryan, not the Ryan you mentioned, I don't think, a young man who helped me with my shopping on Wednesday, and I really appreciated that.
Where was it? Where was it, Betty?
It was outside Tesco's, and he could see that it was too heavy for me to carry. I was going to my knitting class, and he carried it for me, and I was very grateful for that.
Jolly good. Which Tesco was it?
The Tesco in Ramsey.
Okay. And what are you knitting at your knitting class?
Oh, well, I make dolls mostly.
Oh, I see.
And we do things for Christmas and all that sort of thing as well.
Jolly good. Okay. Appreciate it, Betty.
It's age concerned, by the way.
Oh, yes. They're having a do, I think, in Ramsey soon as well.
Yes.
All right. Have a good weekend, Betty. Thanks for calling.
And you. Thank you.
Hello, this is Doug Farragher. In conjunction with Manx Radio, I'd like to invite you to join us and learn something about our native Gaelic tongue, the language of man.
Oh, blowing a hoolie out there.
Come in for a bravig by the fire. Just stocked up at Hearth. Never been so warm.
Who's that? Hearth?
Aye, they've got kiln-dried hardwood for me log burner, Colombian coal and smokeless ovals for the open fire, kindling and firelighters, all delivered. Great value too.
All goes up the chimney anyway, so I pay more. I'll be giving Hearth a call.
Check their website as well. Just order and they deliver.
For all your fire fuel needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
When you need a fitting memorial or headstone for a loved one, contact Manx Memorials in Peel. This long-standing family-run Manx company offer a wide range of granite and marble headstones and memorials, along with an island-wide inscription and renovation service. Manx Memorial's skilled professionals will take the time to help you choose a suitable memorial, and we're proud to say we'll beat other local quotes. Call 843 861 or email matthew@manxmemorials.co.uk.
Your wish is granted. Because it's Panto time at the Gaiety Theatre. Oh, no, it isn't. Oh, yes, it is. Stage Ed presents the classic panto Dick Whittington, specially adapted for the Isle of Man this Christmas. With fun for all the family, as Dick Whittington and his Manx cat Tommy go to find out if the streets really are paved with gold in Laxey. Can Tommy help Dick become the Lord Mayor of Laxey, or will Longtail King stop him? And more importantly, will Sarah the cook ever sort out her soggy bottoms? Book now at villagaiety.com or call the box office on 600 555. Sponsored by Zedra Isle of Man and supported by Manx Radio.
The momentum is building for the Ravens as they return home looking to continue their good form in the NWCFL Premier Division this weekend. Targeting a sixth straight win, FC Isle of Man host Burscough on Saturday in a fixture that has provided goals galore in recent years. Join me, Rob Pritchard and Tony Mepham for FC Isle of Man versus Burscough, kicking off at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Manx Radio will be bringing you full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Live coverage of FC Isle of Man on Manx Radio is supported by Selton, investing in our community.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good afternoon. 26 minutes before 1, Friday lunchtime from Douglas in the Isle of Man, Manx Radio. And after Mannin Line today, before 1 o'clock, a couple of TT legends will be on. We're looking back in the 60th anniversary archive to 1989. And one of the very first TT legends, Stanley Woods, speaks to Geoff Cannell. 1989, talking about the ever-increasing speeds around the mountain course in 1989. Stanley Woods and Geoff Cannell after Mannin Line today. Tony's on now. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Well, I've got a couple of things on this banking, right?
Yeah.
Number one, Lloyds needs to publish immediately their justification for this asinine suggestion. Footfall has fallen. Okay, so in 2019, I guess that was 5 years ago, wasn't it? We were in the middle of COVID for 2 years. I would like to see, has it actually gone up from that time or not? They were closed probably for some of that time, and that's just ignored. That's the first thing. So their justification is just rubbish. And I can't believe that anybody in Lloyds thought that was a good one to put in. It's not a good justification at all. I use Lloyds as one of my banks, and that bank is always busy as far as I can see. So there's no justification for doing it other than the fact that somebody behind a closed door somewhere has decided to do it. And it has the acquiescence of the government. Your Treasury Minister is very much in favour of getting rid of paper and money and doing everything online. He keeps saying how wonderful it is to do it online, but he doesn't do anything about our taxes because he's too busy putting all his money in a bank or putting it in a bank online because he's not taxing himself. He pays 2%, and I guess he earns over $100,000 a year. So why doesn't he reduce the tax? And the other thing is that he should be putting that taxation on higher earners, not on lower earners. So the 2% needs to be reversed, and he needs to up the tax on all those over 50,000 or 60,000. Okay, that's the first thing. The other thing is the government is all in favour of this because I keep going banging on about, why don't we make the post office a bank? And you never get an answer. You never get an answer.
Well, I've posed this question, I think, in the past to politicians, and that we could follow the example of the Gibraltar government. They started their own bank.
I'm 100% behind that. Good idea.
So we could do it. I mean, it's quite easy. We could do it. We've got the technology to do it. We've got the legislative drafting staff that could do something like that. We could start our own bank, even grant ourselves a banking license. It just seems there's no political will.
Agreed. And we could also tell all the banks out there that if they keep closing branches, we'll withdraw their license to operate in the Isle of Man. Would they like to do that? I don't think so. So I think there's a lot of things that the government could do, but are just sitting on their hands on the sidelines and saying the right things. Oh, this is terrible. We shouldn't be doing that. But they actually physically don't take any action to try and stop it happening. The quicker we get rid of this government and get somebody who's for the people, as opposed to all the, shall we say, the friends of the government, the better. And they need to hang their head in shame, a lot of them. All of them. I'd like to see how many of those people out there in government are in favour of closing bank branches. And then we'll see how many get elected again next time. Because this is going worse and worse. Next thing is you won't be able to go to the voting station because you're old. I mean, it's just getting worse.
We've also talked in the past, I think, about getting banking services into the post office and making a virtue out of necessity, and then propping up the postal service with some banking facilities. I think Barclays did that with a few postal branches in the past, but it seems that came to nothing.
I don't think it's got political will behind it. If you went out there and started doing this, the banks would all pedal backwards, for sure, because all of a sudden they wouldn't have a control. The government wants the banks to have control so they can control us. That's what it all comes down to. And it sounds a bit weird, but that's what would appear to me, and a lot of other people, I think, is exactly what's going on.
But I mean, that's you said that. Beastie said it. Julian said it about us feeling a little bit powerless. It's almost like we're painting ourselves as victims here, Tony.
I think the issue is the government has got agendas which they don't talk about, and they don't tell the truth. And until they do, we can't have a discussion about it. Global warming, fine. The weather's changing, wonderful. So we should put a wind farm up. And for the last 2 weeks, we've had no wind. So what are we going to do then? Oh, we'll import very expensive electricity from across. But don't worry, it'll be green. It'll just cost you 3 times as much as the electricity you can produce in the power station. We have an opportunity to take advantage of the gas which lies offshore, but we don't want to do that either. Because that would be, somebody would complain about that.
Even though everybody else is doing that. Everybody else is racing for gas.
Well, yeah. But you're going down Ed Miliband's road when you say we're not doing it. And Ed Miliband is turning the UK. It'll end up, we'll be importing all our power. Because he's got nowhere else to go. He's got no base loads. So the only base load you're going to end up when there's no wind is nuclear and gas. So there won't be enough power out there in the future to support these much bigger populations we keep wanting to have, but we can't support. So I don't see an answer for it. What I see is inactivity by the government and no political will by the government to do anything about it. And they don't want to give an opinion on it either.
Well, we do have a Manx bank here. It's called Conister. Conister's got a banking licence, so why couldn't the government give Conister incentives to open small branches, I wonder?
I wonder who would not want that. Lloyds, TSB, I don't know, Barclays, who else? NatWest. They all want to control. They all want you to do what they want, which is to go online, and then they'll turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, it's not my fault you lost all that money. That's because you went online and you lost your PIN or something, and somebody took your money off you, and I'm not paying you back. That's where it's all heading, and that's why people don't want to go online. I don't do any online banking. I refuse, on principle. If I have to go online banking, I certainly won't do it with a Isle of Man branch. That's for sure.
Okay.
So I'd go to somebody actually on the web, which is much cheaper.
All right. Appreciate it, Tony.
Just think about how you can get a lower footfall over 5 years from 2019 when we had COVID. Tell me, I don't understand this. Publish the data, prove it to us, and then we'll still disbelieve you, because every time I go in the bank, it's full.
All right. Thanks, Tony.
Take care. Bye.
Good to hear from you. And let's get to Robert with us. Hello, Robert.
Hi, how you doing? I was thinking about banking. There's a place down in Port Aaron. I was down there with Pia 2 days ago, and it's just opposite Tesco there. It's basically Foot-Teen Bank. I mean, if you want to set up a bank, it's Foot-Teen Bank, and kids can come in at 14 years old and get whatever they want and get I think it's a Reliant security card or something like that for the charity over in the UK.
It's called Foot-Teen Bank?
Yeah.
Wow, never heard of that before. And that's in Port Aaron, you say?
Yeah. I mean, we go down to Tesco, get the place opposite where the garages there, where the buses stop.
Yeah.
And I'm on the grade hard Italian cheese, so I'll take it easy for now.
Huh? Well, I've not heard of that before. So Foot-Teen Bank. All right, Robert, thanks for the information.
I began to struggle with the stairs, but I didn't want to leave our family home. So my daughter told me about Acorn Stair Lifts and their new showroom in Douglas. I was able to try the stair lifts and find the right one for me and the home I love. They were so friendly. The whole process was hassle-free, and they offered the whole package from installation to servicing. Choose the island's first choice for stair lifts. Acorn Stair Lifts, South Quay, Douglas.
Call Acorn Stair Lifts now on 672 414 or call into our Douglas showroom.
Preparing for your GCSEs or A-levels and thinking about your future? Or looking to reskill into a new industry? Choose from full-time and part-time courses or earn while you learn through an apprenticeship. From engineering, art and sport to business, IT, animal management, forensics and lots more. University College Isle of Man offer a variety of further education, degree level and postgraduate courses. We'll help set you up for a successful and rewarding future. Visit ucm.ac.im.
Oh, it's certainly getting chilly. I do wish they would get the fire lit.
Well, I have been telling them about Cozy Firewood IOM. They have ready-to-burn kiln-dried hardwood logs in everything from 30-litre single bags to bulk crates, and all ready for delivery.
Well, what did they say?
Nothing. As usual. It's like they just can't understand me sometimes.
Oh, humans. Keep your pets warm with Cozy Firewood. Search Cozy Firewood IOM on Facebook for your firewood quote today.
The nights are getting darker, and you know what that means. It's nearly Christmas. At Millie Chaps, you'll find all you need to add that sparkle this festive season. Decorate your home with quirky ornaments, fabulous rugs and lamps, and beautiful pictures. Millie Chaps also have a great range of unusual gifts, so don't delay. Call Santa, is that you?
Shh.
Ooh, there's some great finds here at Millie Chaps.
Yes, there are. Take time to browse Millie Chaps of Ramsey, a town full of special little shops.
Coming up, we have another winning weekend here on Manx Radio. And this weekend, we're giving you the chance to win a bottle of Refuge Manx rum from Fernoddery Distillery, crafted in celebration of the RNLI's 200th anniversary. The special limited edition rum is presented in a commemorative display box and is valued at £125, with 20% of the sales going to the RNLI. To win, all you need to do is listen out for a winning question, which we'll ask on air right across the weekend. Once you've heard it, text your answer to 166 177. Make this your winning weekend with the Fernoddery Distillery and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
It's 14 minutes before 1. Life is about finding efficiencies, says texter 616. We have to accept we have robot overlords for the next 20 years. Very cheerful. Try living in the west of the Isle of Man. There are no banks at all. So you have to go to Port Erin, Ramsey or Douglas. It was the end of the world, wasn't it, when Isle of Man Bank closed in Peel. If you live in Peel, I mean, have you got over it yet? The fact that Isle of Man Bank went, Athol Place was never the same again, wasn't it? Well done to Beastie, says 068, regarding the Lloyds Bank closure. It's disgraceful. Having bank facilities surely is a civil right, and denying people this right is discrimination. It prevents people having access to a societal right. Keep using cash and keep using the banks. Everything Beastie said is right. This is heading for total control of our finances. Beastie's mantra is, get Manx pound notes. Then they can't get rid of them. Manx pound notes. Fancy Tesco not knowing that Manx pound notes were legal tender. I thought the commissioners will be delighted with Lloyd's closing. It means another empty building that will be allowed to fall into dereliction, says Francis. You never know, do you, Francis, Frankie, Francesca 762. Congratulations to the lady who spoke first. That's Beastie, Daphne. She said, all the things I was going to phone you about. I tell everybody I meet to use cash. Think about it. Smart meters are spying on us. And yes, they want us not to use cash. And when you spend too much, the card will refuse to let you purchase your much-needed pint of milk or loaf of bread. So keep using cash, says Daphne. Well said, Beastie. I agree 100% with her, says Ian. Not only is it sad that cash is being phased out, but there's an agenda at play here, and it's time it was exposed. Clearly, this is being used to control people, says Ian. Well, it is tempting to think, and it's one of the tropes of mankind is to think there's somebody who's trying to organise us from above. It may be so. It may be just a kind of confluence of influences. Big business, multinationals, the global village, global, if you like, global organisations that are all coming together. So it may seem like we're trying to be controlled by people. It may be, it may not be. If you know, and if you've got concrete proof, then I'd love you to. Short of sending me a David Icke video, because those I can do without.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
Hey, remember it's Friday. You know what Friday means? That at 5:30 after updates on, it's Rob Pritchard with everything that's going on in Manx sport. Looking forward to the Ravens playing tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And, of course, you can hear the commentary on AM 1368. Maybe we'll find out what's going on at Michael United. It all seems to have been falling apart, and Geordies have seemed to have given up the ghost as well. Remember, if you're in Garff, there's that drop-in session at the Laxey Sailing Club and Baldrine Church Hall. So it's Thursday the 28th and Friday the 29th of November, looking at the drop-in sessions for the proposed sewage work treatments for the parish. Thursday 28th, Friday 29th. Thursdays at Laxey Sailing Club, Friday Baldrine Church Hall. They'd love to hear from you and love to see you. The co-op in Douglas earlier this week, it was cash only because the computer had given up. I had cash, says Liz. Oh, Liz. And Clegger. Hello, Clegger.
All right, Andy, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Right, so basically, right, all I want to say is I think people are thinking into this a little bit too deeply, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Well, basically, right, that bank's never busy. It's never busy. And the only thing that it is a hazard. Because people are pulling over to get cash out from the ATM, double yellows, and it's just a hazard, it is.
So we're overthinking it.
I think everybody's overthinking it. They're thinking it's some big conspiracy, but the fact of the matter is, Andy, it's just not a busy bank.
And you don't think there's any more... I mean, there's nothing else they can do about it, because some people do like a bank.
I know, I appreciate that, but, you know, we're living on a small island. It's not like they're travelling from one city to the other.
Well, people get used to the convenience, don't they? And anything that changes people's lives, they can get a bit, a bit, precious about, really.
No, I appreciate that. But like you said earlier on, the banks in Peel, they seem to have coped with it. So, you know, everything's online these days.
And you don't feel threatened at all by everything being online and using cards all the time?
Well, not really, because I bank with Ireland Bank, and, you know, we're all right.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that. All right, have a good weekend. Thanks for calling.
All right, Andy, take it easy.
All right, 9 minutes before 1. Nothing sinister about banks closing, says Desmond. No staff, no wages, more profit. Oh, there we are. I've just come back from Budapest, where cash is king, says Sue. Cash is king in Hungary. The bars and the restaurants ask you to pay in cash to keep their economy stable and enable them to buy supplies and pay their staff. You get a far better exchange rate from British pounds into forints if you use cash instead of a card. I've also heard the same about other places abroad. It just seems to be the UK that's pushing for all payments by card. Does that bank survey include lockdowns? Well, that's the point. 278's the point that Tony made. If it's for 5 years, the first 2 years were in COVID. So maybe we'd like to know what the footfall was before COVID. Well, a society that relies on electric vehicles and electronic banking is doomed to failure, because they can stop a society functioning at the touch of a button. Perhaps people should think about that, says this correspondent. We have no bank left in Castletown. I get so fed up with the amount of times that the ATM isn't working. Is it not working, or is it just empty? Because often stuff gets empty by Saturday afternoon. Now, they fill it normally on Fridays. And if there's a big run on it... I'm listening today with a couple of pals, and we all agree the points the lady made about cash and more. We believe the island is being used as an experiment, says 775. The government's not working for us, well, most of them, so we the people need to be very wary of the future. If we don't pay attention to the small print, the next new legislation will be without our votes. It's shocking, it's scary. It's a bit downbeat, isn't it, this Friday? I was hoping for something a bit more uplifting. One of your listeners said Ramsey Bank, Isle of Man. Well, it depends on what day you go there. Usually it's packed when I go in. And yes, we really do want it kept open, says Manx Will. So what days is Barclays open in Parliament Street? Is it open? I don't think it is open all the time. Is Isle of Man Bank open all the time as well? I agree with that lady totally. That lady, by the way, is beastie. It's easier to see what cash you have to spend in your pocket. Credit cards make us spend more. Well, that's the point about credit cards, isn't it? You know, kind of spend now, pay later.
The Mannin Line. Daily interaction, debate and exchange of ideas. Broadcast on Manx Radio from midday till 1, Monday to Friday.
Well, that's about it. Got to get out of here because Geoff Cannell's on the way, and everybody got out of the way for Geoff Cannell, let me tell you. Geoff Cannell and Stanley Woods are on the way as we go back to TT's in 1989. Graham dropped a note to Graham Fox-Hume. The wind hasn't blown, the sun hasn't shone for much of the last 2 months, and the weather forecast can only say it's typical winter weather, so there'll be virtually no electricity from wind farms or solar panels, and if the power plant is shut down, the interconnectors couldn't cope. Blackouts all round. Geothermal energy generation will be available 24/7, 365. Why do the government never mention geothermal? And by the way, who is the Genesis Drilling Company on the Isle of Man? the Genesis Drilling Company. That's it. Thanks to Alex on the phones. Back on Monday. Have a great weekend.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation station. This is Manx Radio.
Today, as we look back over the years, a treat for TT fans. The great Stanley Woods, who came back to the island years after his, I was going to say triumphs, but it was on a motor Gutsie that he beat the Norton in the 1935 Senior. Geoff Cannell suggested to him that the speeds and the conception of the TT had perhaps changed.
Well, difference in its speed, yes, but not its conception. I mean, it was then and still is a sporting event, the premier sporting event of the motorcycling world.
What did you think of Steve Hislop's 120 miles an hour lap in practice the other night?
Really fantastic. But I went round the course yesterday afternoon by car, and even since 1983, when I was last here, I can see the tremendous improvements to road surface and the easing of bends, so that I suppose an improvement in speed is to be expected.
But in fact it adds to the mental concentration. It was more physical in your days. You were shaken to absolutely smithereens, weren't you?
Well, not if you train properly for it, but the strain was there, the mental strain was there and is still there. I don't know what the physical strain is like nowadays. I think it must be considerably less with the improvement in control, brakes, road holding, tyres, and of course, above all, road surfaces make life so much easier. Must do.
But nevertheless, it is a tremendous speed. But I'm sure you recall people saying 30 years ago that the TT was getting too fast, and they're still saying it. What would you say to that now?
Well, I remember when the course was first lapped at 60 miles an hour, the greybeards, men of my age nowadays, or maybe 20 years less, said, oh, the limit has been reached. It's going far, the machines are far too fast, reduce the capacity. Excuse the interruption. These comments have been going on year after year. Well, not every year, but from time to time they crop up that the machines are getting too fast. In my opinion, the machines will never get too fast for the top men, but there'll only be a handful of men at the top that can handle those machines.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.